Hey guys, over this video I'm going to teach you how you can extract information from videos, audio or images. I'm going to show you how you can extract data from handwritten invoices, how to build your own computer vision model, and also extract key information from long-form contracts. We're going to be using Gemini 2.0 Flash, which is Google's newest LLM. So enough talking, let's go ahead and let's dive into building. Oh, and real quick, if you're looking for support, I have a bunch of resources in the description below. The code that I'm going to show you today is actually available for free. You can also book a meeting with me if you want to dive deeper into your workflow or if you have any questions about the content that we're going to cover. All right, let's go. So there are three individual use cases we're going to go over. The first one, we're going to be analyzing an invoice and query the information. I'm going to be querying that image, so asking about the payment terms, the amount or the currency. Use case number two, I'm going to be analyzing a PDF. I'm actually going to use a lease agreement and I will return in a structured output. So I'm going to return in a JSON the information like the first name and last name of the landlord, but also of the tenants. And then the third use case, we're going to be analyzing an image, tag it, and return the output as well in a structured format using JSON. Let's hop over to Cursor now and go over the use case number one. All right, so use case number one is a set of 3 steps. The first step, we are going to create an index. So if you're familiar with vector embeddings, we're actually going to use the image and send it to Quadrants. Quadrants is just a database where we're going to store the vectors. Step 2 is going to be to add the image into the vector database so that it's going to actually get turned into a set of vectors. And then the last step, we're going to be able to query the information from that vector. So let's go over it. So here is the script where I'm defining my quadrant collection, and we're just going to call it invoice collection. And the reason I'm going to call it invoice collection, this is entirely up to you, but this is the invoice that I'm going to be analyzing. All of the data is like dummy data. This is my company, but we're going to pretend that Dodge from Washington is actually going to bill Tesla and Elon Musk for an amount of $10 million for the services that they've been providing. I'm not going to expand on that, but that's just like the use case I came up with then. So we're going to create that collection for the invoice. Then we're going to process it. So here we are defining the model of the information that we actually want to extract. So we're going to be getting the bank name, the receiving bank details, payment due date, and so on. Then we're going to upsert, so adding all of the values from the image into that collection using that same embedding. So it has to be consistent with the index. All right, so now let's just go over like an example. I'm going to initialize the Gemini query tool, and I'm going to first return the output with the invoice object, right? So bank name, receiving bank details, and so on. Then we're going to query the vectorized information from the database. So what is the total amount due on the invoice? What are the payment terms? And so hopefully it's going to answer both questions. So as you can see, it's returning the JSON output with the relevant information. So routing number, all of it is coming from the invoice. And then the total amount due on the invoice is $10 million and the payment terms are 7 days. So it's just kind of reusing that information. But so as you can see, you can actually query that image. So if we go back to it, so this is the amount, $10 million, payment terms 7 days, and it extracted the information about the bank. So Silicon Valley Bank, beneficiary name Tesla, and so on. Perfect. So now let's hop over the second use case. So now this is use case number 2. It works like in a very similar fashion. So we are defining a set of pydantic models. So the kind of JSON output that we want to return. So here we have a contract, which is a lease agreement that I have here under PDF, lease agreement. It doesn't open, but it contains several pages with all the major clauses, and you're gonna see how this works. And then in this contract analysis, I want to extract the first, last name, and address of both the landlord and the tenants. So we are initializing the Gemini 2.0 Flash model here. And we're going to do 2 things. The first one is we're going to ask questions about the contract. So extract both the landlord and tenant information and return it into a JSON format. And then the second thing will be to actually also analyze and come up with an analysis on it. So let's try it out. Contract analysis. Let's see. Perfect. So structured data. So we have the name of the landlord. So this guy, I am the tenant and I am sharing this apartment. And then here we have some important considerations. So it's also analyzing the contract. and reviewing the different clauses, telling me about the price, whether it is fair. It's extracting information from a PDF, and then you can do whatever you want with the JSON output. So if I show you just in the code, you can just select the lease agreement object, and this could be reused if you are to analyze contracts and you want to compare the information that you get from the contract against your guidelines or policies. So now I'm going to go over the last use case, which is going to be to use the spatial recognition. So tagging items that we see on an image and then run some analysis on it. So this is the third and last use case. So here we're going to do something a bit similar with the spatial recognition example that I showed you earlier with from the AI Studio. We're going to be using this image and we're going to ask Gemini to spot all the cupcakes and return us the other objects which are not cupcakes as well. All right, so let's go over the code. Here I'm initializing the model, so Gemini 2.0 Flash. And I'm just gonna basically, to make sure that it works like in the AI Studio, we're gonna be using different plot bounding boxes every time it recognizes an item with the AI to then just map it out and resize the image to make sure that everything flows consistently. You could customize this as you wish. You could pick different colors, different shapes, and also the relative sizes to the object. And then we have the basic analysis, which is going to be returning the items. And then we're going to ask also, again, with a custom prompt, analyze this image and identify the specific objects of interest. And then it's going to return a JSON array. So again, we're defining the structure of the output here, bounding inbox, where you have the set of dimensions and the labels, right? So let's try it out. Computer vision. Let's see. Cool. So this is the output that we got. So it returned all the cupcakes that it identified, and it also identified the items that are individual items. So raspberries, marshmallow jars, but then you have the different cupcakes. And finally, those are the detected objects. So you can just reuse, count the items, do whatever you want with it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So that was the third use case. So if we just go over the three use cases, so we learned how we can analyze an invoice and an image and then ask questions about that image. The second use case, we analyze the contract and return key information that we structured out of that contract. And then the final use case is the one where we just identified all the cupcakes. We plotted some boxes around the identified objects and then returned the list that you can just reuse later on. So yeah, three individual use cases that have a bunch of different applications. And like I said, if we think about it in terms of business ideas, if you are to analyze an invoice, you could also use it with handwritten invoices. So if you want to take a picture of some of your invoice and then very easily transfer it onto your phone or a CSV file, this is something you could do. Use case number two, obviously, if you're in the insurance industry or you work in a legal team, you want to analyze clauses and compare them to what you're willing to accept, then you could do this automatically instead of having to sift through documents. So the context window of Gemini is the equivalent of 8 books worth of documents that you can analyze and then structure the information from. And then analyzing and tagging the image, there are a bunch of use cases. If you are to do a damage report and you want to figure out the damaged items and then categorize them, you could just take a picture and do this. Because this is multimodal, even if you were to film, you could ask your AI to take a screenshot of every frame, tag and map out every single item that you filmed. So if you are on site and you want to catalog all the different items that you have or that are damaged, this is something you could be doing. So yeah, incredibly excited about the capabilities of Gemini. And like I said, right now they've only focused on multimodal on the input side, but they're soon going to release the output part, which means that we're going to be able to extract info from a video and then generate a new video after running some analysis in between or not. So yeah, thanks for being here. Like I said, all of the code is freely accessible on my GitHub. If you have more questions on how to set this up, you can also book a meeting with me directly. You have a link to my calendar in the description of this video. Otherwise, I will see you next week for another video about AI agents.